Well, for more on the story, we can now bring in political analyst and former U.S. ambassador to Panama, John Feeley. He's also a member of the National Security Leaders for America, which has condemned those U.S. Strikes in the Caribbean. John, it's great to have you on France 24 tonight. Let's begin with the deployment of that aircraft carrier group, because it's quite a significant escalation of events. Just what message is the U.S. trying to convey by flexing more firepower in the region?
You know, Jenny, that's exactly the question that many of us who are critics of the Trump administration's policy in the Caribbean are asking ourselves. Are you really sending an aircraft carrier group to fight narcotics trafficking, or are you sending an aircraft carrier group to threaten Nicolas Maduro to abandon power in Venezuela? This has been one of the major problems that many of us who served for decades, like the National Security Leaders for America in senior positions of national command authority, that we're asking ourselves. What we have had since September is a stated purpose to stop drug trafficking to the United States. Hey, we're all in favor of that. But what we've had is the apparatus of war that looks a lot more like an invasion.
So as I understand it, Venezuela plays a relatively minor role in the region's drug trade, and yet Donald Trump has really focused his target on the country and is accusing, as you say, Nicolas Maduro of being the leader of a drug trafficking organization. Has he provided any basis, though, for these claims?
You understand absolutely right, Jenny. According to the Trump administration's own DEA, that's the Drug Enforcement Agency, Venezuela only accounts for about 8 to maybe 12, 15% of the cocaine that is trafficked into the United States. Make no mistake, Venezuela is a country with a dictator, Nicolas Maduro, that allows drug trafficking to happen. But this isn't about the critics of this policy coddling Nicolas Maduro or drug traffickers. Our problem is that there has been no presentation of evidence that the boats that they are just indiscriminately hitting from the sky are in fact presenting a danger to the United States. I mean, first of all, these are small boats. These are thousands of miles away from the United States in some cases. And while nobody denies that cocaine trafficking is a bad thing, we know how to do it under the rule of law. The United States Navy, the United States Coast Guard, something called the Joint Inter-Asian Agency Task Force out of Key West, the Department of State, the CIA, all of the people that I used to work with, we have worked this problem for 30 years, 40 years. We know how to do it under the rule of law, with U.S. Code Title 21, with announcements, with boarding by Coast Guard law enforcement detachment folks who are trained and deputized to interdict drugs on the high seas. What we don't have in this case is any sense of the legality. The top charges for drug trafficking might include something up to, under Title 21, life imprisonment. It doesn't call for the death penalty. And here we have the President of the United States saying, well, we tried it under the rule of law. It didn't work. And so now we're going to kill him like dead. That's not where the United States needs to be or should be.
And John, I'd just like to hold you on your earlier point about how Venezuela has accused Washington of launching this campaign as part of a broader plot to overthrow Nicolas Maduro. Is regime change something that Trump may genuinely possibly have in mind?
Well, nobody really knows the mind of Donald Trump, least of all me. But I think it is fair to say that there is a wing of his support, mostly represented by Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, perhaps John Ratcliffe over at the CIA, who believe that Nicolas Maduro is a malign influence in Latin America. Hey, guess what? I fully agree with you. And it's very difficult to dislodge a dictator when a dictator has decided to scoff at an election and kill his own people, the way Nicolas Maduro has done, and at the same time allow drug traffickers to operate with not only impunity, but with his government's support. So there's no issue here, again, about going soft on Nicolas Maduro. But the issue, Jenny, is that if the United States is going to go to war to remove him, There is a process under the United States Constitution for this. Under Article 1 of our Constitution, it is Congress and not the president that can determine the United States should be put on a war footing. The president, under Article 2, does have some authorities to stop a clear and present danger to the homeland. But, you know, Pete Hegseth said yesterday, the Secretary of Defense, said, we're going to treat these drug traffickers just like Al-Qaeda. Well, guess what, Pete? You're not doing it. Because when the United States decided to go after the terrorists of Al-Qaeda, the Bush administration went and got an authorized use of military force from the Congress. And 535 representatives stood out on the steps of the Capitol and sang, God bless America. There was a united American sentiment behind going after Al-Qaeda. If you take a look at the drug traffickers, who again, nobody is supporting them, no one's going soft on them, but there was a War Powers resolution that was brought about 2 weeks ago, and it got 48 votes. It was a bipartisan vote that did not want the United States to go to war with Venezuela. So while regime change may be in their mind, I'm not at all certain it's in Americans' minds.
So then, given all of this, how is Maduro likely to respond to this show of force? What kind of retaliation can we expect from Caracas? Because Trump has also said the U.S. hasn't ruled out conducting strikes on land next, which would be another significant escalation. Is this something you see happening?
You know, here, Jenny, we have to be very honest. The United States has the world's most powerful military. I proudly was a part of it in the 1980s. I actually flew my helicopter off of the Iwo Jima, one of the ships in theater. The men and women who are serving in our armed forces are among the highest trained and most professional in the world. There is no question as to the asymmetry of military power between the United States and Venezuela. So Nicolas Maduro the only response he can give is to shake his fist, to yell a lot, to say silly things, and to arm a bunch of very poor, probably hungry and desperate Venezuelan militia men and women with sticks and ancient rifles. They are no match for the United States military. The issue is whether or not the American people want to spill the blood and treasure of their sons and daughters in the American force in the Caribbean right now to take out a dictator. And then, as Colin Powell once famously said here in the United States, we're into the Pottery Barn rule. You break it, you bought it. I personally, and most of my colleagues at National Security Leaders for America, believe that America has no appetite right now for another foreign war, as much as we despise Nicolas Maduro's human rights abusing regime.
And the standoff has also pulled in Colombian President Gustavo Petro, who was sanctioned by Washington on Friday for allegedly allowing drug trafficking to flourish. Are we seeing a sort of interventionist policy from U.S. here? And if so, to what end?
Well, keep in mind that sanction is not exactly an interventionist policy. The OFAC, that's the Office of Foreign Asset Control's sanction out of the United States Treasury, means that American citizens and U.S. residents cannot do business with Gustavo Petro as an individual. It means that any assets that he might have in the United States, which I doubt, are frozen now. It doesn't mean that the United States can't do business with the country of Colombia, or even that we have broken diplomatic relations with Colombia. Once again, with Gustavo Petro, you have a man who I personally, in my personal judgment, believe has no business being the president of a serious country and a longstanding ally like Colombia. He's saying a lot of, frankly, Jenny, stupid things, and they are mirroring the intemperate and foolish things that we're hearing coming out of the White House. So in a sense, you actually have sort of both countries being held hostage to the intemperate and unprofessional rhetoric of three presidents.
John, very, very interesting to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to France 24 today. That's John Feeley, political analyst and the former U.S. ambassador to Panama. In other news,